Let's check out this outfit,
Dude,
man.
you know what I mean?
I'm inspired. You're wearing my favorite color. You match our backdrop perfectly.
no
You
idea.
match the set great. Can we get like a foot up if you can to show the
Is that
socks?
yeah, I did break out the flamingo socks. You know, after decades of being an artist and seeing changes in things like social media and the way people consume art or the way people make it, there are days where I'm like, do I even like doing this anymore? It's not the same as it used to be.
Do you try to focus like on Christian music? Do you take that influence into everything you do?
Not everyone has said it to me, but I know for a fact that people have heard my music and be like, is Brett still a Christian? I'm going to be around people who have different beliefs than me throughout my entire life. And all I want to do is, I pray this all the time, like, let me being around this person be a benefit to them. Let me bring something good to this person's life, represent Jesus the best that I can in this person's life.
I was in like the middle school dances, jamming in the corner, drinking like my orange soda, eating my slice of pepperoni pizza by myself, you know, jamming out to No
That's
Doubt.
so relatable.
That was me. I feel like I almost lost like a little bit of myself in gaining Christ.
Yeah.
And then I'm not saying that in a bad way because Jesus gave me literally everything, but I sometimes struggle with that still. Like, man, who is Christo now? Living out an identity in Jesus.
Right. I'm like getting chills right now because I was thinking about this earlier, because identity is so important because we get lost in things, right? Like if my identity is my job and I lose it, I lose myself. That is why it's so important, and it has meant so much to me and taught me so much to seek having my identity in God. I was always kind of this mind that like, if there's this ongoing battle between heaven and hell, and there's God and there's good and there's evil, I want to be in on that. I want to know what's going on because it kind of sounds awesome. It was so fast. I feel like I'm exaggerating, but I swear it was like, it cut to a commercial and it was something like, tonight at 9 p.m. on the History Channel, why Jesus is absolutely real. And then it went back to whatever I was watching. And I was like,
This is incredible.
I was like, bro.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to the Christo Show. My name's Christo Giannopoulos, and I am your host. This is my Christian podcast where I take you on my born-again walk with Jesus. Today, I am joined with Brett Ennis. He is the co-host of the Keep Up podcast, where he does rankings, reviews, and reactions with his brother Tim. He is also a member for his local worship team, and most notably, he is a hip-hop artist and rapper, better known as Animatronic The Abolisher. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. This whole connection we were talking about, this was just so like divinely guided. I feel like our buddy Chris put us together, and you know, I appreciate you coming by today just off the whim, and we're going for it.
Dude, of course. I appreciate you taking a chance on someone you barely know. I will do my best not to sink the ship while I'm here.
No, there's no way you can sink the ship. We let Jesus take the wheel on the Christo Show.
Absolutely.
So you probably get asked this the most, but how does one come up with the name Animatronic The Abolisher? Where does that come from? What does that mean? Because like I'm genuinely curious.
Dude, that's a very fair question. I actually don't get asked it as often anymore as I used to, which surprises me, but I've always thought of it as divine because it legitimately happened in a moment. So when I started writing over beats and things like that, I get very compartmentalized in my head and start like building a project out of whatever I'm working on. So I was like, okay, I guess I rap now. What is it called? You know, what does it look like? And I was working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car at the time, and I remember sitting in a car, and I was like, what's a good name? And the first thing I came up with was Berserk, which, to nerd out for a second, was the name of my favorite anime at the time. But there ended up being, there was like a really well-known, I think, German rapper that had the same name. And I was like, all right, I can't use that. And I sat there for a moment, and at once, I can't say I audibly heard it, but all at once, Animatronic The Abolisher came into my brain. And I was like, those are two crazy words. And it just sat with me, and it was weird. And anyone who knows me will tell you I kind of lean towards the weird. And I was like, all right, I really like that. Over time, the animatronic aspect of it has kind of taken on a life of its own during my live performances. I've had a lot of people say like, it just kind of fits the way you move live. The abolisher part in the moment, I mean, that's always made sense to me. At the time, I was writing so much about my salvation experience and freedom from sin. And I feel like largely we identify like the word abolish with slavery, which is very synonymous with sin in my experience, the way we become enslaved to those things. And that's a lot of what I was writing about. So that was the sort of the abolition aspect of the name. And it just sat with me, and it's been like many years, over a decade now that
Wow.
I've been using that name. So
That's quite the story. It sounds like it was almost like a divine download.
yeah, it felt that way because
Yeah.
it was just like, what even is that?
Right. You're like, I could not have thought of that
Yeah.
myself.
Even to me, it was just a lot.
Yeah.
Way too many syllables, and but I've stuck with it, and yeah.
Hey, when it's meant to be, it's meant to be, right?
Yeah.
So can you tell the audience like what introduced you into the music scene? How did that that get started for you? How did you end up being a hip hop rapper? Like where did that come from?
Yeah. So I guess the crash course in my history with music is my dad was a musician. He was in bands, and I would be with him on the weekends, and he would take me up to his attic where he had all the setup. All the guys would come over to practice there, and he started teaching me there. So he was a multi-instrumentalist. He would play guitar, taught me drums. Years later, that was probably when I was like 9, 10 years old. And then years later, I would try out for a band when I was 13. I became the vocalist of this band. It was a punk band called the Morons. And
I love it.
yeah. And I just kind of kept falling in love with music. The more I learned about it, the more bands I listened to, artists I discovered, and then playing it was like this whole new thing. And then I became the drummer of another band, and then I really had my hands in punk and hardcore and metal more than anything, but I always loved hip hop. And a friend of mine in high school started making beats. I asked him if I could write some stuff over those beats, and that's sort of where that started. And then I ended up, I think the first thing I recorded, I won a Battle of the Bands as a rapper.
Is that like, what is that? Because I feel like I remember hearing that from high school. Like Battle of the Bands.
Dude.
Like, would you compete in a high school environment?
So yeah, I mean, it was a thing in schools largely.
Yeah.
This one that I did was like at a local venue where it was just local bands playing, and the prizes were like, you could win like, I forget what the top prize was, but I came in second place and won some studio time and $1,500.
Oh, whoa.
As a rapper. It was mostly, there was one other rapper, the rest were all like bands.
Back then, $1,500 went a long way, folks. Not like today.
No, it was huge. I was like,
that's
what?
huge.
To this day, I mean, I've never been paid anything like that to just play a show, you know?
Wow.
So then I recorded a demo, and I was still playing in bands mostly, but that's when I started playing shows. I was probably, this was like 2007, I think, is when I like wrote and recorded my first rap EP.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So I watched you on another podcast recently, and I know you talked about your dad's kind of influence on your life, and I know he passed away when you were younger.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can tell us like what impact that had on you as a person and maybe how that translated into your music journey?
Yeah. It's funny because I was so young. Funny is not the right word, but there's so many things that you don't realize happen when it happens until later. To clarify, you know, I was 13 years old. It was very sudden. It was a motorcycle accident. And, you know, I processed however I processed at that time. I remember a lot of the reactions to me from the adults around me were just like, they were constantly checking up on me, which makes sense. But part of it was because I didn't, I think I cried maybe once, and I was very close with my dad. It's not like I was, you know, I didn't care. I think you don't really know how to fully process that kind of thing. And the way it affected me moving forward in life is big events would happen. So, you know, I would be dating someone, or my first show. He was the influence that got me into music and had me interested to the point where I would play and want to perform. He never got to see me perform. And so I would start writing or you know, play a show, and it would like hit me because all those things would bring me back to like, man, when did I even start playing? And I would like remember a time with my dad. And I think the way it affects me now, I mean, I'm constantly thinking about that aspect because it's really like he really planted so much of who I am in my personality and in my life in those 13 years. And I think the way it impacts me is, rather than being able to have a conversation about something I'm going through in life now, I kind of have to go back to like what he taught me when I was a kid and maybe transfer that to adulthood, which isn't always possible. You only learn so much in those first 13 years,
Right,
but I
yeah.
can say it was a lot. He did so much in that time. So I kind of reflect on that when I'm, not only just music, but as a dad and as a husband. And I do often wish I had that father figure around, there are definitely moments where I'm like, I can feel that lack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think just even as men in general, sometimes like processing our emotions can be difficult.
For sure.
Expressing them can be really difficult. Like I remember growing up as a very emotional child. Like I was crying a lot as a child, probably more than normal, but I was always like sensitive in the spirit. And really until I started moving in the faith, did I really understand like what that like spiritual discernment was and that sensitivity was.
Yeah.
But I feel like I was almost as a guy kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost like reprimanded for being so emotional as a child. And I feel like that caused me to kind of like suppress it in a way a lot to the point where now as an adult, and besides this last year, I feel like leading up to that last year, I was kind of like more hardened and it was really kind of hard for me to like access like those emotions. And to be honest with you, I rarely these days cry out of like sadness. If I do, it's like out of joy.
Yeah.
Like this last year has been just so many like joyful, divine moments like with the Lord that have like brought me to my knees.
Yeah.
Even something I was telling you that happened earlier, with my whole situation. I'm going to touch on that, I think, in another podcast episode. I'll spare you guys the details. But in this moment, like even for me, like, we had like a family emergency happen and, my first reaction wasn't to cry. It was to drop on my knees and just praise God. Like, thank you so much that this could have gone so much worse than it did.
Yeah.
Do
you find that beauty makes you feel emotional?
Ooh.
Like, do you see, because I get emotional at what I would consider like silly moments now.
Yeah.
And like, I'll be watching a movie and it'll just be like the relationship between like, a father and son or something, and or any parent and any child, or just a really like sweet moment in a friendship, and I'll literally be like,
it's like it's human connection that like stirs us up emotionally. But I think that's because we've started living in a world that's so disconnected. Like we're not going up to each other and chatting to random strangers regularly. We're glued to our, like, let's be honest, like everyone's glued to their phone. As much as we like to be like, oh, we're not, we are. It's one of the biggest distractions I have in my life.
Yeah.
So like, I know, like, I don't know, the Holy Spirit just uses certain moments like that. Like when you see human connection, or like it can be something even as simple as me just like walking on the street and just seeing like maybe just an old lady walking by herself, and my heart like will just break. I'll be like, oh Lord, like I just hope she's, she's okay and she's protected and like she's got people looking after her. It's just, it really is like the simple things in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I feel like we are living in a world that's so disconnected from our emotions, from that human connection, that like when you feel it, you like, it really hits you.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, there's something real and true about that.
Exactly. Yeah, man. So good. So you in an essence, you dream to create for a living.
Yeah.
You're such a creator. You do so many different things in the creative world. And I want to talk a little bit specifically about some of your music. So you recently came out with the song Bitterness and Gin. And then you were also featured in a song that I checked out called Heavenfall.
Yeah.
Was the creator of that, is it House Lights?
House Lights.
House
Yep.
Lights. Okay.
Yep.
So that was awesome. It was giving me Linkin Park vibes. Like I just immediately thought Numb, like I've become so numb. I used to go crazy to that song.
Yeah, great song.
One of my favorite songs. So I'm curious, like what is the process of you in your creation? Like how are you getting these songs? How does it come about? How are you making these connections to make these videos? Like what is that process looking like?
So it looks different every time. A lot of times for me, it'll start with an instrumental, and I will hear or kind of feel a concept. Like I just very much will either connect with an instrumental or I won't. Typically, the way I know I'm going to follow through with writing to a certain song is if I get a couple lines and the concept is really clear to me. So for Bitterness and Gin, that was a beat that my friend Pat Spain sent to me. Shout out, Pat. And I immediately just felt like almost the lyrics almost kind of fell out of me for that song. Like it was just very sort of kind of stream of thought and just sort of like assessing life. And it's just about maintaining who you are despite challenges, to kind of put a broad stroke to it. And the video for that one was another thing where I had a concept to be shot in this record store and to kind of rekindle one's love for the art that has maybe jaded you a little bit over time, you know, after decades of being an artist and seeing changes in things like social media and the way people consume art or the way people make it. There are days where I'm like, do I even like doing this anymore? It's not the same as it used to be.
Right.
You
I mean,
know?
people are like generating AI songs. Like they just
Right.
type their lyrics into a thing and it's like giving you the beat, giving you the whole. I'm like, man, is anything authentic anymore?
Right.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
But going back to what you said earlier, you feel it in your spirit when it is.
Yeah,
You can
that's true.
discern the difference between something that's artificial and something that's human.
Mm-hmm.
And we're living in such a world where that's like that divide is becoming so clear.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's true. And if I really break it down, that's what Bitterness and Gin was for me. I was like, when I perform and when I write, those are the moments where I'm like, yeah, of course I still love doing this. I can't let those moments where I question it like be the truth, because they're not. So to sort of encapsulate that concept in the video, it's me in a record store, and I actually got to have my son be in the video representing like a younger version of me.
Oh, that's special.
Yeah,
I saw that. That was your son?
Yeah, it's my son
Wow,
in the video.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool. And my friend Tyler and Revelry Media did that video, and that was a very different experience than with House Lights. My friend Matt is the guitarist for that band and asked me to be a part of that song. And doing a feature is very different because I need to find a common ground there, because there was already a concept for that song. And the vocalist of that band, not to speak for him, but Matt told me he's not, he doesn't ascribe to any faith, but this song was actually about the concept of heaven being sort of a tension, because when you lose someone, despite what you believe, it stings, you know. And even if you believe that heaven is this place where you get to reconcile and be with your loved ones again, it still doesn't take away the pain of that loss. And I was like, I can identify with that, even as someone who is who holds to that belief very strongly. And so that was sort of the process there, finding that common ground, which I love that too. And they invited me to be in the video, which was very cool, because they didn't have to have me even on the song. But I love getting to be a part of anyone else's art or project. Just like this, I see it as such a privilege to be invited into someone else's creative world.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
That's such a neat perspective. Do you ever find it like it's difficult for you, like if you're working with people who don't necessarily align with your faith? Does that ever come to like contradict what you do with your art, do you think? Like, do you try to focus like on Christian music? Like, is that like, do you take that influence into everything you do, or it doesn't necessarily have to be the forefront for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I know this is different for a lot of people. And I love talking about this, because I think the thing that makes our relationship with God so palpable and so real is one of the things for me is conviction. Because for me, conviction is a direct communication with God. If I feel very strongly about like whether I should or shouldn't do something, maybe it's something just in me, but I feel like, you know, as you get to know God's voice, you're like, this isn't what's best for me or the people I'm working with, or whatever the situation may be. I mentioned that to say that's what I lean on for everything. I'm going to be around people who have different beliefs than me throughout my entire life. And all I want to do is, I pray this all the time, like, let me being around this person be a benefit to them. Let me bring something good to this person's life, represent Jesus the best that I can in this person's life, whether it's, you know, just working a shift with them, or, just being a good friend, or if it's art. And to me, art is one of the most vulnerable places someone can really express themselves, and a lot of people do.
Right.
You doing this is like so vulnerable, and there's a freedom in that, and there's like a realness in that. So I am going to bring all of my life experience and who I am into everything I do.
Yeah.
There have been times where there's one time in particular where I did a feature on a song, and there ended up being another feature on that song that I didn't know about. I wish I knew about it because I don't know that I would have done it. And it's nothing against, it's nothing personal. It's a song that I wouldn't have made, and I don't really align with everything that is said on that, on that track. Versus other songs that I've done with people who I know are not like believers. To me, it doesn't have to be a worship song. I want to be in relationship with people, and I want to bring my faith as well as, like I said, all of my life experience into that, and be honest the same way I hope those people are honest and open with me. I see it as kind of a relational thing.
I like that. I like picking people's brains about that, because for me in particular, it was such a weird thing, because I feel like I was my whole life relying on my own understanding of things. And then when I met Jesus, it literally, like, my identity became like Jesus. Like I just eat, sleep, breathe like Jesus. And in a way, I feel like I've almost lost who Christo is in that. So it's like, it's interesting for me, like, how to navigate like your identity as an individual person and also your identity in Christ, and how those two meet and what that means. Like, how does Christo move through the world now, just knowing that like Jesus is everything? Right. Like, how do so like, I almost feel like, I don't even know if maybe I've talked about this a little bit on the show. I probably have, but I feel like I almost lost like a little bit of myself in gaining Christ. Yeah. And then I'm not saying that in a bad way, because Jesus gave me literally everything. Yeah. Like, my whole life has changed in the best way possible. Yeah. But I sometimes struggle with that still. Like, man, who is Christo now, living out an identity in Jesus?
Right. I'm like getting chills right now, because I was thinking about this earlier. This exact thing. And how I think a lot about identity. Identity is so important. And individuality.
Bro, let's have the conversation. Let's have it, because I have a lot of thoughts right now.
I think about this all the time, because identity is so important, because we get lost in things, right? Like, if my identity is my job and I lose it, I lose myself. If my identity is in another person and I lose that person or that relationship, I lose myself. And that is why it's so important, and it has meant so much to me and taught me so much to seek having my identity in God. And it's not like I'm always great at that, but I now recognize when I'm not, because if I lose something and I feel like it takes a part of me, I'm like, I was putting way too much of myself into that thing. And the interesting thing about, like, I really believe in like a diversity in the body that, like, I don't even know that most people know exists or is possible. I'm not saying
in the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not saying I know anything more than anyone else, but I'll say it like this: like, being in music, I've stepped foot in a bunch of different subcultures. Like corners of hip hop, the metal and hardcore scene.
Right. So I don't mean to cut you off, but like, this is like, maybe this was my original question, because maybe to the outside world, it might look like that lifestyle is contrary to like a walk with Jesus. But like, maybe this is just like your identity partnering up with that walk with Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, being your individual self, but also seeking out a path with Christ.
Yeah. Like, I often think, let's say sin doesn't exist. If I write a song about, and it's not a worship song, but we all know sin doesn't exist. Is anyone concerned with what that song is about? You know what I mean? And to clarify, I've had people, not all of my songs are not necessarily worship. I like to think everything I'm doing is worship in some way. I'm doing what I was created to do, or I seek to do that. Again, I won't say I'm always doing things perfectly, but I will write songs about feeling angry. I will write songs about feeling frustrated about finances. And I like to process through my music. And I not everyone has said it to me, but I know for a fact that people have heard my music and be like, is Brett still a Christian? And I'm not swearing, I'm not saying anything like crazy, but because it isn't sort of what you might expect. I don't know. Everyone expects different things. I don't like blanket statements, but
Yeah.
you know, it's not. You wouldn't say like, "Oh, Brett's a worship artist" necessarily, you know,
Right.
or animatronic. You're not going to expect to hear that.
But I love that though, because I have featured a few worship artists and their stories are very different from your story. You know what I mean? So it's like, I love seeing that like two people can both be Christians, but be exercising that creative freedom in a different way. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be like what you would think of as worship.
Yeah, yeah, and I think just to kind of go back what you were saying, the concept of like individuality, I think it can be, it can be dangerous if we're trying too hard to like be who we are and stand out. It can turn into like a proud thing,
Yeah, pride,
you know?
pride issue. Yeah.
But I also think more belongs to God than we think sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't see a lot in the world that I'm like, oh, that can't be of God. I see twisting of things that I'm like, maybe that person, I don't even want to put it on a person, but you know, there are certain things that are like, okay, that's definitely not of God, or the word speaks directly against this. But there aren't a lot of like fashions or genres or things like that I'm like, God could never move through that. I could be wrong, but those are the things I think about a lot.
Right. I would say like reading the word changed my mind about a lot of things, like realizing that like our work should glorify and edify the Lord. You know what I mean? That made me change my perspective and how I wanted to like navigate my podcast.
Yeah.
Because like I struggle with this, like, am I too on the head with my podcast being about Jesus?
Oh, okay.
Because like I watch so many Christian creators and I'm like, wait, like they're able to portray their experience, but not, they're able to be Christians, but not necessarily have their whole podcast be about Jesus. So I'm like, it's like a constant back and forth with me, you know what I mean? And I think like I'm in a growing season, like I'll eventually get to the point where like who I am and what the Lord wants me to do will just like maybe, you know, come to like a meeting point.
Sure, yeah.
You know what or maybe not. Maybe I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I always pray into that, like, Lord, let me make sure I'm doing your will.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? But I always come back like with this individuality thing, like God made us all so different. You know, we eat like what you're good at, I'm not good at, and vice versa. And we each have our strengths and we each have our weaknesses. And I think it's really cool to see how different members of the body of Christ exercise their talents and their personalities and all of these things in a different way.
Yeah.
And then we can all still collectively like have the same belief in Jesus.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And like, I don't mean to hijack and stay on this topic, but
Not at all. I love it.
One thing I would say is like, it's important we don't use our, like, I think it's important to be ourselves, be who God created us to be, and not change ourselves because we think we're supposed to look like another person.
Yeah, that's good advice.
But we don't want to use it as an excuse to be proud.
Or to slack and be like, oh,
Right.
like I don't have to.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. I want, because I feel like this is like, I don't want to like, oh, he's so crazy in punk rock. He's just going to do whatever he's like. You don't want to. I speak about this because I think about it so much and I pray about it. Like, Lord, don't let me like wear something just to stand out and call attention to myself. You know
Speaking
what I mean?
of, let's check out this outfit,
Dude,
man.
You know what I mean?
Like I'm inspired. You're wearing my favorite color. You match our backdrop perfectly. You match the set great. Can we get like a foot up if you can to show the socks?
Yeah, I did break out the flamingo socks.
You know, I was telling you my friend was not happy with me for wearing my booty slippers on the show. And because, I like to sit Indian, what's this called? Indian sunburn? Crisscross applesauce?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
What am I thinking? Indian sunburn is this thing.
Yeah.
But, maybe some featured socks would be cool on the show. Maybe I need to integrate that.
I watched some episodes and I saw people without shoes on. I was like, you know what? I'll break these out.
I like to stay comfortable. I hate wearing shoes, to be honest.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm not a shoe guy.
You should be comfortable. It's your studio.
See, that's what I say. I'm like, forget the haters.
Right.
This is my house. I'll do what I want. So I'm curious to know, who are some of your like favorite like artists? Like, who do you pull inspiration from?
Oh, that's a good question. I go through seasons where I'm like, I'll really kind of fall in love with an artist and kind of just study all their work. I've done that like my whole life. One of the first bands I ever really cared about was No Doubt. I was always really big fan of No Doubt.
No Doubt's Gwen Stefani, right?
Stefani,
As the lead singer?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
What song do I love from No Doubt? It will come to me.
Tragic Kingdom was like a huge album for me, which had like Just a Girl, Spider Webs, Sunday Morning.
Oh, there's a one. I'm going to look it up.
Do it. Look it up. I want to know.
I'm going to tell you. It's probably a sad one.
Yeah.
I'm like, I had my days though, you know, where like we grew up on that music.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I was in like the middle school dances, jamming in the corner, drinking like my orange soda, eating my slice of pepperoni pizza by myself, you know, jamming out to No Doubt.
So relatable.
That was me.
Yeah. Yeah, they were like one of the first bands I really cared about, and then I went through. I got really into punk, and I was really into like Rancid and
Don't Speak.
Oh, Don't Speak. Yeah, that was on Tragic
That's
Kingdom.
one of my favorites.
Yeah, I should have. That was like the main single.
That was the one.
Yeah, the one. And then I listened to a lot of heavy music. Lately, I've been listening to a lot of this band called Earth Groans and Indie Tribe and Dill. I've been listening to a lot of their stuff. Very, very cool. When I started rapping, I was really into like Atmosphere, Cage, this like, I guess you would call it like backpack rap, like Midwest hip hop.
I've never heard of backpack rap.
Really?
That is so neat.
Yeah. It's a lot of storytelling. That's
Yeah.
what, like, I think that's where a lot of my influence came from. I love to tell a story in a song lyrically. So that's a lot of the stuff that I grew up listening to hip hop wise.
Oh, wow. That's so neat. Yeah, I tend to lean into like, if I'm not listening to worship music, the indie. I like a lot of indie, like alternative stuff.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I've completely stopped listening to secular music.
Really? Yeah.
Oh, mainstream music. Yeah. Just it doesn't sit well in my spirit.
Sure.
So, you know, but like at the same time too, this was another thing where I was like, is it even okay to listen to not worship music anymore?
Oh,
I think these are the challenges that like maybe like Christians face when they're like born again and they're like not enough people talk about.
Yeah.
It's like this contrary of like, okay, we still live in the world and there is all these things of the world, but like what's okay, what's not okay. And I think it's just like it's a discernment thing and it's also a conviction thing. So like if you're listening to things and in your spirit, you're like, oh, this doesn't feel right, then maybe you shouldn't listen to it. But
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think because I've gone through seasons, you know, where I've like gotten rid of all secular music, like physically gotten rid of like albums and stuff that I kept for years, and then, you know, now to me it's like situation by situation now. I don't listen to strictly Christian music, but there are definitely things that don't sit well with me, and I think one thing that's been hard for me is. I would think there's a right answer. So I'd be panicking looking for that. Like, God, I don't know if this is okay or not. Just tell me definitively if this is okay or not. And I think, at least where I'm at now, I really believe that's where that communication between you and God comes in. I don't want to put my convictions on anyone else if it's not like, hey, the word says this. I think we have to look at how is it impacting my life? How is it impacting people around me? Is it affecting my attitude or my thought life? Like, I think those things are really important.
yeah, what we consume really does affect us though.
So
way
much.
more than people think.
So much.
Way more than people talk about.
Absolutely. It really, really does. And sometimes you don't know what it's doing to you until you cut it out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
And
that's
you're
so
like,
true.
oh, yeah.
You're like, oh man, that wasn't as good for me as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I think it's a good time to get into our new segment, Christo's Curious, our 1-minute speed round where I give you a random mix of questions so we can get to know you better.
All right.
This is only the second time of doing it, and I actually really enjoyed this the first time I did it. But I realized I was maybe going too slow in elaborating, so I'm just going to try to spitfire.
Okay,
I'm not
all right.
really going to elaborate more unless there's something that sticks out. I'm like, whoa, we're going to have to come back to that after.
Okay. All right.
So I'm going to set a minute timer on the clock.
Whoa, it's a minute?
It's a minute.
All right.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to try to do my best to get these questions out.
Okay.
All right. Ready? Going to start the timer. 3, 2, 1. All right. Craziest place you've ever traveled to?
Craziest place? I'm already so bad at answering these fast. What's the craziest place? Montreal?
Okay, we'll take it. How many tattoos do you have?
Oh my gosh. Around 16.
Favorite song?
Black Hole Sun by Soundgarden.
Ooh, good one. Talking on the phone or texting?
Talking.
All right, Brandon Lake or Chris Tomlin?
You know, I'm more familiar with Tomlin, and I've played so many of those songs on worship teams. I'm going to go Tomlin.
Wow, okay. Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Okay, pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
Favorite movie?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990.
Ooh, early bird or night owl?
Night Owl.
Pre, mid, or post-trib rapture?
I don't know if I understand that question.
And that's time. And that's the show.
Wait. I got it.
That's just what I'm curious about because it's so controversial. Like
Oh, okay.
Like some people don't believe in the rapture. Some people do believe in the rapture.
Right.
Like the church getting taken before the tribulation happens.
And the tribulation being the 1,000.
The 7-year period
7 year,
before the 1,000-year millennial reign.
Gotcha.
I
okay.
only ask that because it's so controversial and Christians get heated about it. So I like seeing people's answers.
Oh, shoot.
Because I don't know where I stand on it. So
Okay.
I put it in there to kind of get a little like feel for where other
I
people.
like that that's in there. I wish I had. I don't know that I have a direct answer on that.
I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah.
I just like to know what other people think.
Yeah.
Because some people think the church is taken before the tribulation. Some
Right.
people think it's after the 3.5 years. Some people think it's right before the millennial reign. So.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then
Isn't there also the school of thought that we're in the tribulation, or am I making that up?
So, man, there's so many theories out there.
Yeah,
There's like the little season. People think we're in the little season where Satan is running free right now.
Right. Okay.
So that's like part of that. The tribulation is when God pours out the wrath over.
Right.
So it's like a 7-year window.
Okay. Yeah.
Which I'm not trying to be in, but if I have to be, this is what I say. This is what I say. This is what I've heard and I love. I pray for a pre-tribulation rapture, which means that the church doesn't have to endure any of the wrath of God.
That'd be tight.
But you know what? I've come to peace with God. If I need to be here for it, so be it. I
Sure.
still know where I'm going in the end. I still know you're my savior. And Jesus, I love you. So that's where I'm at on that.
Yeah.
So speaking of Jesus, you're involved in your worship team at church. You do a little bit of drumming. You do a little of bass. How did Jesus reveal himself to you to get you to a place of doing worship?
So it just came with, if you're asking specifically about, I want to say too, when I like clarify about worship and stuff like that, there's like the concept of worship itself, and then there's like the genre. So I just don't want anyone to think I'm like, don't call me a worship artist, because like it's not like that. I just, there's the genre of worship.
Oh,
and,
yeah. I'm referring to like, more so you like being integrated into the church.
Totally.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
I realized I said that earlier, like I'm not a worship artist, and it's weird. Sometimes we have one word that like describes multiple things in the church, and
that's fair. But like if you categorize yourself into like hip hop and rap instead, if that fits better,
totally,
so be it.
Yeah.
But I guess this may be a twofold question. Like maybe like, what was your first encounter with Jesus like? Like when did you know? And then like how did that translate into you actually plugging into your church and helping out in that way?
Sure, yeah. So when I first knew, like, what was my salvation experience like? Like, we're looking for that story? Okay.
I would love to hear that.
Sure. So stop me if it gets too long-winded. I'll try to give you the highlights.
You got all day.
Okay.
No time crunch.
Cool. So for some background, I grew up what I will say is culturally Catholic. I remember going to church for like maybe an Easter service here and there, that kind of thing. I did do CCD or Sunday school for a little while, and ended up quitting that to play football. So it was kind of just a cultural thing. Like we were Catholic. I don't really know what it meant though. To some practicing Catholics, they'd probably be like, oh, you weren't really Catholic. So I had this sort of like free flying belief in God that was just like, I always believed there was something more than just us. That always made sense to me, but there wasn't a lot of relationship there. After doing Sunday school, I would pray at night. I would say an Our Father and a Hail Mary. It was just kind of like a habit I got into. Eventually kind of stopped that. And when I think I was 17, I met a group of friends, this new group of friends in the music scene. The band that I was in started playing with a couple other bands regularly. And that band and some of their friends were believers. And I noticed very specifically about this group that it meant something very different to them than it meant to other people I'd met who were Christians. It really impacted the decisions they made, and the way they talked about their faith was not like nothing about it was like weird or off-putting. Like I would ask a question. I'm kind of a naturally curious person. I want to learn as much as I can about as much as I can. And I was always kind of this mind that like, if there's this ongoing battle between heaven and hell, and there's God and there's good and there's there's evil. I want to be in on that. I want to know what's going on. And I want to be, I want to be involved in that because it kind of sounds awesome. That's like where I was. I was like, that sounds wild and crazy. I'd like to get in on that. And all of a sudden I'm talking to, peers who I'd be like, well, how do you know you're hearing from God? From God.
Right.
Like what we believe, like talking to you right now, what we believe is kind of wild.
You know what? When you think about it, it is. But at the same time, I feel like everybody deep down, they know it's true.
I know. I totally agree.
There are times in this walk where I disassociate.
Right.
I'm like, am I really up here saying that like I'm battling like a spiritual warfare battle?
Right. Yeah.
But God has revealed himself so thoroughly and so profoundly and undeniably in my life. You can't deny it.
Right. Yeah. There are moments. I had a moment with a friend of mine one time where he was like questioning me on it, and we had been working together for a little while, and he's like, so you believe a man died and 3 days later rose from the dead? And I was like, yes.
It's unbelievable, but then you have to ask yourself, like, only God would.
Right.
Like, he was also born of a virgin. Yeah. You don't hear that happening every day.
Right.
Unless you do, and I'm just not hearing about it.
No, yeah, I'm right. Yeah, and those are the moments when someone like asks you and you're like, oh yeah, what I believe by like many people's standards. It's like, it's a wild story. It's a wild reality,
But what you witnessed was people actually walking out their faith. And this is what deters people a lot from the faith is the hypocrisy.
Right.
People profess Christianity with their mouth. They profess Jesus with their mouth, but their actions are contrary to what they're believing in.
Right.
So you actually got they were talking the talk and walking the walk.
Exactly. And what I like to call attention to is these kids were in the same places I was. They were going to the same shows I was. They were playing the same kind of music I was. And that to me is so interesting because I still notice something so different about them, and I recognize it as it being their faith. And when I asked them questions, it wasn't like, well, I kind of think this. It was like, no, I've gotten to know God's voice over the years. And okay, well, how does worship work? Oh, well, God receives worship. We worship him because he's worthy, blah, blah. Just like these straight answers. And I'm all of a sudden like, there are answers to these questions. Like I'm not really expecting answers, I kind of think of it as just like there are plenty of religions. They're all just whoever, your parents are, you adopt their religion and you grow up with that. And all of a sudden it felt like I might have a choice between like, figuring out if this is a real thing or not. And so that kind of started this path for me of getting more serious about like really seeking something for myself. And I asked a friend, one of these friends, how do I get God to communicate with me? And what she said was, just ask God to reveal himself to you. I can't do it. She was so matter of fact. She was like, I can't, don't come to me to like tell you who God is, ask him yourself. And I was like, all right. And I did that. I asked God to reveal himself to me. I was like, I did the thing where
you're like, hey, Jesus.
Yeah. Hey God, it's me.
It's me again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, if you are there, I want to know you. I want to see you. And, within a week's time, this, I don't know, this part of my testimony is always funny to me. In a week's time, I heard a song that I'd heard a million times by Weezer, where there's a lyric where he's like,
you can't leave us hanging. What's the song?
It was, what song is it? I don't want to forget the name. Is it, I think it's Say It Ain't So.
Oh, it's such a good, I used to play that on Rock Band.
Amazing. And there's that line in there that's like, cleaned up, found Jesus. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't remember it, but yeah.
Up, found Jesus. If it's not Say It Ain't So, people are going to make fun of me, but that's my bad.
That's in like that's towards the end where it's like, I cleaned up, found Jesus.
Exactly.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, it is Say It Ain't So.
Yes, it is.
And then they go back into it, and then the down.
Ooh, that's a bop.
What a banger.
Oh,
I'd heard that song a million times. That band I was in, the Morons, covered Weezer songs, and I had never noticed that lyric. I was like, okay, well, I'm thinking about God and Jesus and stuff. Maybe it just stuck out to me. But that song came on the radio and I heard Found Jesus. And I just remember being like, that's weird. couple days later, I'm in my room watching, like, I don't even remember what I was watching, History Channel, something like that. No, I wasn't. I was probably watching like cartoons. I watched cartoons or a movie on TV or something. And this is why it stood out to me. A commercial came on, and it was like, it was so fast. I feel like I'm exaggerating, but I swear it was like, it cut to a commercial and it was something like, tonight at 9 p.m. on the History Channel, why Jesus is absolutely real. And then it went back to whatever I was watching. And I was like,
This is incredible.
I was like, bro, I literally was like, I remember being in my bed and like, what just happened? Like, I'm not even watching that channel. Like, it just felt really weird. So that stood out to me. And then the third and final thing that I was like, this is hard to ignore. My family owns ice cream trucks.
Really?
Yeah.
Around here?
Yeah.
Ooh, you're going to have to give me the details after
Dude,
this.
absolutely.
What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Ooh, my favorite ice cream flavor is probably, I'm a big strawberry guy. I like strawberry.
Really?
Yeah, but anything with
that's
chocolate.
a classic.
Anything with chocolate and peanut butter, I'm also a sucker for.
Fire. Have you ever heard of Totally Turtle?
No.
Oh my gosh, bro. It's like a Richardson's ice cream flavor. Caramel, chocolate, brownie chunks, and is it, what kind of nut is it? Like a cashew or something? It's fire.
I'm in.
Fire.
100% in.
I'm an old man when it comes to ice cream flavors. I'm like,
If you like
I'm like
nuts in it, then that's
pistachio.
Pistachio's great.
Pistachio's good. I also love German chocolate cake.
Real good.
So good.
Maple walnut?
Oh, maple walnut. That was the other one I was going to say.
Real good.
Let's go.
Yeah. So ice cream trucks.
Ice cream trucks.
And I would work on the trucks with my my grandfather, my mom, my uncle, whoever's running the truck, and we would do these events. So that weekend they were like, Brett, we need you for an event. I'm like, sure, let's do it. No idea what the event is. And we pull up to it, and there are banners everywhere with crosses and images of the Lord, and it's a Christian motorcycle rally. I didn't know that existed. It was a Christian motorcycle club rally, and it was huge, this massive field, and just Jesus everywhere.
I just found out it existed.
Yeah, man. And they get ice cream trucks, and they throw serious parties outside sometimes. It was this crazy big rally. And I was just like, we pulled up, and I remember asking my grandfather, I was like, what's the event? And he was like, I don't know, it's some like motorcycle thing. And I'm like, okay. And we're pulling up, and I think I was like looking at my phone, and I'm in the back of this big ice cream truck, and we pull up, and I look out, and it's just like Christian motorcycle rally. And it was 3 things in like a week. And I was like, and I texted my friend, who is now my wife, actually.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, I think God is answering. And she was like, she was probably like, yeah, I'm not surprised. She was always so like,
Was
yeah,
she locked
I
in
told
with
you.
faith before you?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
100%. She was so instrumental, and we were really good friends, and
She was probably praying for you without you even knowing it.
I know for sure that she was, and I didn't know until later. She has a whole different perspective of my testimony than I do, and I told her there was a moment where, like, because we were friends for a while, and she, a big tension in us even considering dating was she was like, you're not a believer. And that was, at the time, I was like, that bothers me. That feels like a prejudice of some sort. And she was like, I know it feels that way, but it's really hard to understand when you're like, it's really hard to understand when we're on different sides of it.
Right.
Now I totally get that.
Right.
Like,
Now knowing what you know, you're like, oh my gosh, no wonder.
Yeah. And I said these words to her at one point. I was like, I want you to know that if we date, I'm not just going to become a Christian. I'm not going to be a fake person. And she was like, I wouldn't want that for you.
Fair.
But I said those words. I was like, I'm not going to do that. And this, going back to the what I now refer to as like the 3 signs. This was before, we were dating, or I have my timeline mixed up. She'll correct me. She'll be like, no, that was on this date.
She was like, everything you said on that podcast was a complete lie. I have no idea what you were talking about.
None of that happened.
None of that happened.
We're not even married. I don't even know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but that was a moment where it became real to me. That wasn't the moment I gave my life to God, but it was a moment where I started seeking Him really, really seriously. There are, if you have questions, throw them at me, but I will jump to the moment that I got saved was at maybe the cheesiest stage play I've ever seen in my life, hosted at a church. I was sitting by myself at the back of the church, and it was it was an altar call at the end of the play. And I remember sitting there and in my brain saying pretty much what I just said, like, Lord, if you're there and there's this big, crazy reality of angels and demons and you're good and there's evil, I want in on that. I want to know you. And I'm sitting there, and whoever was, traveling with this stage show came out, and he was like, if you're thinking right now, Jesus, I just want to know you. If you're there, I just want to know you. And he said the words that I was meditating on. And it wasn't like it just felt like exactly what I was looking for. I just want to know you. I just want to know that you're there. And he was like, if you're thinking, I just want to know that you're there, just raise your hand. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. So I raised my hand. And then he said, if you raised your hand, I want you to come up front. And I could not move. I was overwhelmed with like the Spirit. I could not move. And I remember thinking, like, am I nervous? I don't usually have a problem like public speaking or performing or whatever. And I couldn't get my legs. I couldn't stand up. And I was just sitting there like this. And one of the ushers came over and he was like, I noticed you put your hand up. Do you want me to go up front with you? Like, I think he thought I was nervous. And I was like, I would love to. I physically cannot move right now.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
I would have guessed like a nervous thing, but it wasn't that.
No, it was so intense. It was like a legitimately like shaking, and like it felt, I was warm, like sweating, and it wasn't even that hot. Like I was like, I don't know what's going on. And he was like, okay, well, let me just sit with you. And is it okay if I pray with you? And I was like, sure. And he sat and prayed with me, and he led me in what was my moment of salvation, and like really recognizing that it was something very, very real and very tangible. And I found out afterwards that that Rachel and this whole team, Rachel's my wife, and she and this whole team were out back praying for me. She was like we had started dating at that time, and she was like, my boyfriend's out there, he doesn't know the Lord. And they were like, let's pray for him right now. And they were out back praying for me. And that usher went out back and he was like, I just sat and prayed with your boyfriend. And apparently she said they were all like, yeah, like this big rejoicing. I had no idea any of it was happening. I was just by myself. I sat with this guy I didn't know, and I was like, yeah, something weird's happening. And then like we did this prayer, and I felt different. That's the thing. I haven't really talked a lot about this, but I'll never forget that night sitting with Rachel, and she was like, how do you feel? And I hadn't thought about it till that moment, but I legitimately felt like a different person. I felt clean. The only word I had for it was clean.
New creature in Christ, brother.
It was I was like, I literally feel like refreshed, like I just started something. And a lot of my early, walk was saying and feeling things that, I don't want this to sound like it's about me, because it wasn't at all. As part of the testimony, I would say and feel things that were biblical, but I didn't know they were. You know what I mean? I hadn't been reading the Word.
That's so real, though.
Yeah.
Because not until I started reading the Word did I realize that God put the Word on our hearts.
Right.
So like it's innate.
It would take other believers to be like, that's a verse. Like what you just said is a verse. And things I would write in music about my salvation experience, people would be like, oh, that's this verse. And I would be like, really? I've never even heard of it. So that was the experience. And I know the second part of your question was about worship, and it was just, I was a musician. So as I'm going to churches, they're like, grab a djembe, grab a drum, like grab a guitar, whatever. And I would just, we did a lot in the house of prayer and house church settings. So it was a lot of sitting in a circle, whoever wants to pick up a guitar, do it. And then it just, I graduated to various worship teams and worked with the ministry for a while that essentially just did worship and teaching at like schools and different ministries and things like that.
Wow. So it just unfolded naturally. It took its course naturally. That's awesome. How old were you when that happened?
That was October 29th, 2006. I was 19.
That's incredible.
19.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal, man. And it makes me want to talk about kind of where the whole part of your life leading up to this has led up to you pursuing your craft and your creative craft and your walk with the Lord. And those two things have combined. And now you kind of find yourself in a place where you feel like this is what you want to do. you feel like this is my calling. The Lord, he's given me this ability. I have this talent. I produce this music. I'm a creative person. I want to do this full time. And you just feel like you're coming against like a roadblock, like that breakthrough just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that feeling? Because I think there's a lot of people out there, way more people than we realize, that may be just in jobs that are like mundane to them and they feel like they're just doing it because they have to. They have to pay their bills. They're going through the flow. But then they're being called to something so much greater and they're just not exactly sure how to do it or why it's not happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. You could ask anyone I know, especially anyone in my family, my closest friends, they know that this is the thing that I have like fought with for so long. And I want to say out the gate, I really, really, truly believe God has taught me so much and built my character so much through it. Sometimes I wonder if I like tell myself that to make me feel better about not accomplishing certain things. But it's just too, like, the changes in my character and the way that I think about things now are just too, they're too definitive. I think there are times where I really wanted my music to blow up or whatever, but I don't think it would have been good for me. And now I'm at a point where, like, I don't know if it will ever happen. I hope it does. I still, when I create, like I said earlier, that's when I realize, like, I really do feel like this is something that's been put in me. But the things that we see around us that we count as success, I mean, they're largely just societal. I mean, there are people in cultures that will never, they could be in like small tribes and will never see how amazing they are at certain things because they're not on Instagram. You know what I mean? They'll never be, but they're still doing what they do amazingly. They might be the best at what they do. There might be someone who just never gets discovered, who's like posting something every single day to 3 people and they're incredible, but they won't like blow up. I think the worst thing is when someone gives up because what they think is success isn't something they've reached. Because I can say, I consider myself like a pretty small artist. Like you're right. I do a lot of like creative stuff. It's not, I have a hard time thinking of the stuff I do sometimes as like, I guess that's pretty.
Well, like you don't think it's having the impact or?
Yeah. Okay. I'll say this out loud. And then if it's wrong, I don't feel great that I was about to say this.
Well, you can be honest. And if
no,
I can,
I am gonna, I feel,
if you're being led to say it.
Yeah. Pardon my hesitation. I'm kind of bummed that this was in me and was going to come out. That's why I hesitated to see if it's like how I really feel. Yeah, I have a hard time feeling like anything I create is important. And it's a thing that I'm very aware of, and it's not fair, especially to anyone that I create with. Because there's 2 kinds of pride, right? There's the like comic book supervillain pride where like, I'm going to take over the world. I'm super important. There's arrogance. And then there's the self-conscious, like I'll never be good enough, but you're still constantly thinking of yourself pride. And that's something that's been, I think, revealed to me over the years is like, oh, that's a thing I struggle with. Like not thinking I'm good enough or that my music is worth being heard, or that my podcast is like fun enough for people to watch, whatever. But it still makes me just think about myself. It just makes me think about how do I get to like this certain point, rather than just realizing like, I love to create and I'm going to keep doing that. And maybe it gets better, but what is better? There's all these other like, subcontexts as we try to like improve and get success, whatever that is. But what I've seen is I have, for example, put things out that to me aren't, I don't really know how I feel about this. And one person will text me and be like, dude, that song meant a lot to me. And I'm like, cool, worth it. What am I like? If I didn't do it, that person doesn't have that one moment. I mean, what am I what am I looking for? If more happens in the future and I get to create for a living, awesome. But if not, I'm not going to let my expectations of success like take that part of me away.
Yes. I mean, you said this earlier yourself. Are you putting your identity in your success? And there might be a part of you that without realizing maybe is.
Yeah.
And I think it almost becomes a limiting belief.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, from my perspective, when I started this podcast, I said, God, as long as it's led by you, if we just touch one person, fine. And I know everybody says that, but and you know, this is something that I've talked with Chris about, like, and this is something he says often too, when he started his live stream on TikTok to reach people. Am I going to be okay if this doesn't become what my expectation is of it? And
Great
there's so many
question.
factors going into this, though. Timing is a huge thing.
Huge.
Because what you said is entirely true. The Lord will use seasons of our life to grow us, because say you had that success a year ago, you might not have been equipped to handle that success. You might not have had the resources to handle that success or had the right connections to handle that success. So I think a lot of times what we do, even though it's really hard, even if we've been going at it for so many years, is we're almost like putting a cap on what God can do.
100%.
You know, if
Yes.
that makes sense?
It does. It really does, because God can't use your art if you're not making it. You know, he can't speak to someone through, you know, whatever your passion is. I speak in the context of art and creativity because that's just what I've always loved, and it's always made me feel really alive. And you mentioned something too that I think is important, and I've struggled with sometimes, being like, God, is it the songs I'm writing? Is it because I'm not, I'm not writing like corporate worship songs? And I think that also, it's not necessarily a bad, maybe it's a bad question to ask. I think those are dangerous thoughts, because then it's like, do you want me to do something that looks like what that person's doing? Is it because I'm not, I'm not speaking in Bible verses constantly? Is it, and you put this like works thing on yourself to achieve what you think is success.
Yeah.
But
then that puts your eyes on what the world is doing, and it's taking away from what God, obviously God has led you here. You've had success in your life, you are still creating. So it's not like there's nothing there.
Right.
But this is one of those moments where instead of looking at what the world and asking God, are you trying to align me with what other people are doing? Ask him to reveal to you, how you can be better aligned with him in your way. Your way is gonna look different than their way.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's really important, and it holds you accountable too. It's similar to what we were saying earlier. Like, I believe very much in conviction, and also avoiding excuses for ourselves. You know what I mean? Using conviction, like, oh, my conviction is going to be different than that person, so that means it's okay that I do this or I say this. Like, if we're thinking in that way where it feels like an excuse, it's a fine line, but I think that's where relationship comes in with God.
Yeah.
Another thing that I'll say, because it's recent, it was at the beginning of this year. Another aspect is like I'm a father and a husband, and I have a full-time job that is not any of my creative expressions, and it's been that way for, how old's my daughter? It's been that way for 15 years that I've been doing all three of those things. Sometimes it's been, I'm doing ministry in a part-time job, but I've never been able to full-time do music or podcasting or whatever it may be, writing. So at the beginning of this year, I kind of had one of those like reassessments where I'm like, all right, God, going into the new year, I'm not a big resolutions guy, but I do think looking at like an upcoming period of time and being like, what are my goals or what's my priority?
Yeah.
That's kind of the prayer I set before God.
Nice.
And I say this for anyone who's like, I don't even have time to do the thing that I want to do. I set this before God. I said, Lord, like, what's my role this year? What am I meant to fulfill this year? And I felt very strongly over and over again, family. And I was like, okay, well, what does that look like? And for me, I felt like he said, that means your family, like in home, my wife and my kids. It means your friends and family outside of your home, and it means your church family. So as I've approached everything else, he was like, look at everything through that lens. And I've seen that help me really look at work differently. I'm not begrudgingly going to work. I'm like, this is me fulfilling my role to my in-home family and making sure that I'm providing. This is the job that is in my path. I don't feel any conviction to leave or look for other work. So that changes my perspective on going to my 9 to 5, right? Yeah. It also has changed my perspective on like my podcast, and I'm spending hours with my brother every week. Whatever I say this, I said this on the other podcast that I did recently, but whatever comes of that podcast, there is like a decade's worth of just my brother and I goofing off online that anyone in my family can watch anytime and we can go back and look at. And I have that time with my brother regardless. But on top of that, I've seen this year that our podcast is like, we've just been having these really fun ideas and it's a blast. And we're meeting some people online that are really having fun with it. And I'm seeing that out of what God told me my role was this year, I'm seeing fruit in these different areas. And then with my church body, really honing in if they need someone to, if I can, fulfill a role on the worship team or, help in any way, I'm just trying to be more invested in the church body as an extension of my family. And I'm seeing fruit from that. And I feel like my perspective on the things that might drag me down, like, I've spent so many years being like, if I just had this 40 hours a week to write raps, or if I just had this 40 hours a week to produce YouTube content, my life would be different. And it's such a bitter way to live. Yeah.
It's constantly looking for something that we don't have right now.
Right.
First of all, I want to say, man, I've known you for a whole 10 minutes. Thank you thank you for being so vulnerable.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate that. And secondly, I never want you to lose like belief in yourself that you've missed the train. It's too late. It's not going to happen for me. If it's still bringing you joy and you're not like forcing yourself to do this because it's going to be something, keep doing it.
Thanks, man.
It's going to happen, and it's time, in God's time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about your podcast as well.
Sure.
I mean, I checked that out, and you guys are having a blast over there, like you said.
It's super fun. So it's I say it's a comedy and entertainment podcast. It was born out of my brother and I were living together when we started it, and we're just always talking about it. It's not a brand new concept. It's a couple of guys talking about nerdy pop culture stuff, but we try to really make it like a variety show if you come over to our channel. So we do like reactions to songs we've never heard, recapping things like movie scenes that we like and that kind of thing. There's one series we started recently that I love. There's an odd market out there of people selling boxes of old VHS tapes that were like recorded over, like VHS tapes, blank ones that people would buy in like the 90s and early 2000s and just record live TV.
Really?
Very weird. My brother finds these kinds of things. I think it was during lockdown in 2020 that he found on eBay a giant box of blank VHSs, so you don't know what's on them. Ooh. So we've started this series of like VHS mining is what we're calling it, where we're just picking random tapes, putting them on and kind of doing commentary on it. And it's kind of funny. You'll find like a block, like an hour-long block of like the news, and then the old commercials are really like the gold.
Okay, that's why. You know what this is making me think of, oddly enough? That would be a really good, the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
This would be a really good way to disprove like a lot of things, because okay, the Fruit of the Loom guys, I'm putting it out there. There is a cornucopia on the Fruit of the Loom logo. And then they said there wasn't.
Is there not?
They're like, that's never existed. And I'm just convinced it's a whole psychological operation where they're trying to screw with the public and see how much they can do to us without, trying to make us think we're crazy.
Right.
But you got to look out for stuff like that.
Yeah. We've come across some funny stuff where it's like, we remember like commercials from when we're a kid, and and then some commercials that were like, how did they ever air this? It's pretty fun. So yeah, if it's just like a fun time, if you're interested in that kind of thing, I would say slide over to the Keep Up podcast. We've been having a lot of fun on there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. I'm looking forward to looking into that more. And I guess this might be a good place we can end. I actually, thinking back to what you said earlier about your salvation, and I meant to say this in that moment, how simple is it to just say one little prayer, like, God, if you are real, reveal yourself to me. Mm-hmm. Like, it is so stupidly simple.
Yeah.
And I just can't fathom why, even if you don't believe it, why wouldn't you just ask? Like, because if somebody was like, the Hindu God is the one true God, and if you just said, okay, reveal yourself to me, like you don't lose anything. It's only to your benefit.
It's true. And I think, you know, I don't have all the answers. I'm just some guy, but I think it could be tied to what we were saying earlier about like how wild the reality of our faith is. And I think many people have categorized it as a thing so impossible that they can't even entertain that idea of getting a response to that question. And I think that's an awesome point that you brought up, because it really is that simple. Just humor the possibility,
Right.
that we are not all that there is, and that there's a reason you can feel a thing like love, and that there's a reason that you have these like attachments to other people, that you can identify good versus evil. Just for a moment, humor the possibility that God is the answer to those questions, and you can ask him to reveal himself.
Yeah, it's so simple and so good and so easy. And man, Jesus is a miracle worker, way maker.
This is the truth.
It is the truth. All right, Brett, I end the podcast with everybody picking a Bible verse.
That looks fun.
It is fun. I think God uses this as a way to kind of like almost sum up everything we talk about in an episode, or to confirm things. So,
oh, cool.
I will let you pick.
Sweet.
And then you can read it off and we can reflect on it and chat about it before we go.
All right. Is this two? No.
All right, blue one.
Just put these in fortune cookies. The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Psalm 9:9.
Ooh. Psalm 99 or Psalm 9 ... 9?
9:9.
Okay.
The Lord is a stronghold for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble.
That's deep.
It's pretty deep.
Yeah, that's a little heavy.
Some of the language that is used in like the reverse, like being a slave to the Lord, like this, the Lord being a stronghold, because I think of like a prison,
Yeah.
right? There's too many things going through my head at once.
I know. I'm like, I don't even know how to dissect that one. That's a pretty heavy one.
A stronghold for the oppressed.
I think like the Lord is the refuge for the oppressed in a way, you know, like this is just the Lord saying like, and I'm not trying to hijack your Bible verse,
No.
but to me, it's like,
Can I look something up while you're talking? Is
of
that
course.
cool?
Yeah. I feel like the Lord is telling us like when we feel that oppression, that's when, you know, the Lord is there for us the most. He's always there for us. But like, if you're feeling that oppression, which a lot of us do, you can be oppressed in so many ways. It can even come back to feeling this, you know, identity of like not breaking through, you know, that can become oppression in our lives.
Yeah.
Our job can be the thing that's oppressing us. This limiting mindset can be the thing that's oppressing us. The Lord is saying like, I'm your stronghold through that. Come and bring it, lay it at my feet, you know?
I agree.
All right, we'll go with that. I love it.
Yeah, that's essentially, I think you nailed it, because it's just the idea of a stronghold in time of weakness, that he is the refuge, like you said. There is somewhere to go. A lot of times when you're oppressed, there's a feeling of loneliness, whether you are or not, feeling alone and feeling pushed out.
It's funny you say that, because the blue ones relate to loneliness.
Oh,
I
really?
just looked at that. Yeah, I've never read that before.
Huh, interesting.
It says, "Read me when you're lonely."
Oh,
Huh.
I feel like I nailed it then.
Hey, the Lord's telling you he's there. If you're lonely, seek the Lord.
Amen.
All right, Brett, man. I feel like I've known you for 10 years.
Yeah, it felt good.
So good. Where can they find you?
Oh, I'm all over the place. You can find us on YouTube at the Keep Up Podcast. My music is under Animatronic The Abolisher on all platforms. The simplest thing to do is you can find me on Instagram at This Drink I Like It, and that's my personal Instagram. There's a link tree there, so you can get to all my stuff is listed there.
Sweet. I'm going to put everything in the description down below so you guys can find Brett. Go check out his music. Go support this guy. We just hit 40,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. I'm beside myself. I'm humble. I love my audience. I love when you guys interact. So please leave us a comment, but do yourselves a favor. Go check out Brett. Go check out his material, guys. It's it's so amazing to see God working so differently in everybody else's lives. So go support, a creator over here. Go support an independent artist who's just trying to stay obedient to the Lord in his own unique way. So if you guys like interviews like this, please make sure to give the episode a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bells. I upload brand new episodes every single Monday. I love you guys, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. And Brett, thank you so much for joining me today.
Dude, I feel like you took a chance, and I really appreciate you having me. It means a lot.
Anytime, man. Thank you. Take care, guys.